The radio crackled to life at 2:17 on a Tuesday afternoon. Multiple vehicle collision on Highway 45, unknown number of casualties. All available units respond. Marcus Rivera adjusted his rearview mirror and hit the sirens, his ambulance cutting through downtown traffic like a blade through paper. Beside him, his partner Jenny Walsh gripped the dashboard as they took a corner at speed. "You sure about this route?" Jenny asked, her voice tight with concern. "The GPS says we should take Miller Street." "Trust me," Marcus replied, his dark eyes focused on the road ahead. "I've been running these streets for 8 years. This way saves us 4 minutes." Jenny didn't argue, but she exchanged a glance with the reflection in her window that spoke volumes. Marcus Rivera had a reputation in the department, and it wasn't entirely positive. 6 months ago, he'd been the golden boy of Metro Emergency Services. Top scores in his paramedic certification. Fastest response times in the district. Commendations from the fire chief. But that was before the Henderson incident. Before he'd made a judgment call that cost a woman her life. Before the review board and the suspension and the long climb back to credibility. Now, despite his skills, dispatch gave him the routine calls. Chest pains, minor accidents, nothing critical, nothing where a wrong decision might matter. The other paramedics whispered when he walked past, some with sympathy, others with the kind of doubt that follows someone who's been marked as unreliable. Marcus knew what they said. He'd heard the conversations that stopped when he entered a room. The accident scene came into view as they crested the hill on Highway 45. Marcus felt his stomach drop. This wasn't a minor fender bender. 3 vehicles were scattered across both lanes of traffic. A sedan had been crushed between a delivery truck and a minivan. Steam rose from multiple engines. Glass littered the asphalt like deadly confetti. And people were moving around the wreckage with the jerky, panicked movements of those who had no idea what to do. "Jesus," Jenny whispered. "How many do you think?" Marcus was already calculating as he pulled the ambulance to a stop. 6 vehicles involved. At least 12 potential victims. Maybe more. He could see movement in the sedan. Someone trapped behind a steering wheel that had been pushed back into the driver's seat. The minivan had rolled onto its side. Children's toys were scattered on the pavement nearby. "Base, this is Unit 47, Marcus spoke into his radio. "We have a major MVA with multiple casualties. I'm requesting additional units, fire department with extraction equipment, and helicopter transport." "How many additional units?" The dispatcher's voice came back immediately. Marcus surveyed the scene again. His training kicked in. The same systematic assessment that had made him one of the best paramedics in the department before everything went wrong. At least 4 ambulances. 2 helicopters if available. This is going to be a long day. Jenny was already unloading equipment from the back of their ambulance. Trauma kit, oxygen, backboard, cervical collars. The standard loadout that could mean the difference between life and death when every second counted. But as she worked, Marcus could see the uncertainty in her movements. She'd been paired with him for only 3 weeks, and she was still trying to figure out if the rumors were true. If Marcus Rivera was the kind of paramedic who froze under pressure or made the wrong call when it mattered most. The first victim was obvious. A middle-aged man had been thrown from his motorcycle and was lying motionless beside the guardrail. Marcus approached him carefully, his hands already assessing vitals before he'd even knelt down. No pulse at the carotid artery, no respiratory effort, fixed and dilated pupils. The man had been dead for several minutes, probably since the initial impact. Jenny appeared at his shoulder. "Is he?" "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "We move on." There was no time for second thoughts, no luxury of doubt. In mass casualty situations, the first rule was triage. You saved the ones you could save and didn't waste time on the ones who were already gone. It was a cold calculation, but it was the difference between saving lives and losing everyone. The next victim was in the crushed sedan. A woman in her 30s was conscious but trapped behind a steering wheel that had been compressed into her chest. Marcus could see immediately that she had multiple injuries, probable rib fractures, possible internal bleeding, definite respiratory distress. But she was alive and talking, which put her in the second priority category. "Can you hear me?" Marcus called through the shattered driver's side window. The woman's eyes focused on him with effort. "My chest," she gasped. "Can't breathe." "I know. We're going to get you out of there. Fire department is on the way with extraction equipment. Just stay with me." But even as he spoke, Marcus was calculating time and resources. The fire department was at least 10 minutes out. This woman had maybe 15 minutes before shock and blood loss made her unsalvageable. And there were still other victims to assess. The minivan on its side, the delivery truck with its driver slumped over the wheel, the sedan that had rear-ended the whole mess. Marcus made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. "Jenny, I need you to stay with this victim. Monitor her vitals. Keep her talking. I'm going to check the other vehicles." Jenny's eyes widened. "Alone? We should stick together. Protocol says we work as a team until backup arrives." Marcus was already moving toward the overturned minivan. "Sometimes protocol gets people killed. Trust me." As he approached the minivan, Marcus could hear crying from inside. Children's voices, scared and confused. The vehicle had come to rest on its passenger side, and he could see movement through the rear windows. At least 2 kids, maybe 3. The driver was visible through the windshield, a woman who appeared to be unconscious but breathing. "Hello?" Marcus called through the broken glass. "Can anyone hear me?" A small voice answered from the back seat. "My mom won't wake up, and my sister is bleeding. How many of you are there?" "3 kids and mom," the voice replied. It sounded like a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old. "I'm Marcus. I'm a paramedic. That means I help people who are hurt." "What's your name?" "Tommy." Marcus could hear the fear in the child's voice, but also a determined attempt to be brave. "Okay, Tommy. You're doing great. I'm going to get you and your family out of there, but I need you to help me." "Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. First, I need you to tell me if anyone is bleeding really badly, like more blood than from a scraped knee." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "Sarah has blood on her face. A lot of it, but she's awake. Mom is sleeping and won't wake up." Marcus assessed the situation quickly. The minivan would need to be stabilized before he could safely extract the occupants. But one of the children had significant facial bleeding, which could indicate serious head trauma. And the mother's unconscious state suggested possible brain injury or internal bleeding. Time was critical, but so was safety. One wrong move could cause the vehicle to shift and crush whoever was inside. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the afternoon air. Marcus looked back toward the road and saw fire trucks and additional ambulances racing toward the scene. Help was coming, but it would still be several minutes before they could begin extraction. Several minutes that these victims might not have. He moved to the delivery truck next. The driver was conscious but complaining of severe chest pain. Probable heart attack brought on by the stress of the collision. Another critical patient who needed immediate transport. Marcus felt the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on his shoulders. 6 victims, multiple life-threatening injuries, limited resources, and a reputation that meant every decision he made would be scrutinized by people looking for mistakes. This was exactly the kind of situation that had destroyed his career 6 months ago. The kind of scenario where there were no perfect answers, only choices between bad and worse, where experience and instinct mattered more than protocols and procedures, where the difference between life and death came down to split-second decisions made by someone who everyone had already decided couldn't be trusted. Marcus Rivera stood in the middle of Highway 45, surrounded by chaos and suffering, and realized that this moment would define everything that came next. Either he would prove that he was the paramedic he used to be, or he would confirm every doubt that had followed him since the Henderson incident. There was no middle ground, no second chances, just 6 lives hanging in the balance and 30 minutes to save them. All. Marcus keyed his radio as the first fire truck pulled up behind his ambulance. Battalion Chief Rodriguez stepped out, already surveying the scene with practiced eyes. Marcus had worked with Rodriguez before, back when his reputation was solid, before the whispers started. "Chief," Marcus called out, jogging toward him, "we've got 6 confirmed victims, 1 fatality by the guardrail, critical entrapment in the sedan, woman with chest trauma and respiratory distress, family of 4 in the overturned minivan, unconscious driver, and at least 1 child with significant facial bleeding. Possible cardiac event in the delivery truck driver." Rodriguez nodded, his expression neutral but alert. "What's your assessment of priorities?" "The sedan victim first. She's got maybe 10 minutes before she crashes. Then the minivan mother, possible head injury. The facial bleeding on the child looks bad, but she's conscious and responsive." As Rodriguez began deploying his team, Marcus felt eyes on him. 2 paramedics from Unit 23 had arrived, Dave Thompson and Lisa Chen. Thompson had been vocal about Marcus's return to active duty, questioning whether someone who'd made such a critical error should be trusted with lives again. Chen maintained professional courtesy, but Marcus could see the doubt in her eyes every time they crossed paths at the station. "Rivera," Thompson called out as he approached. "Chen and I will take the sedan extraction. You handle the minor injuries." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The sedan victim was the most critical case on scene. Standard protocol would assign the most experienced paramedic to handle her care. But Thompson's message was clear: step aside and let the reliable people handle the important work. "Negative," Marcus replied firmly. "I'm already established with that patient. You take the delivery truck. Possible MI, conscious and alert, but complaining of severe chest pain." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "You sure you want to handle the critical case? After what happened with Henderson?" The words hung in the air like smoke from the wreckage. Every firefighter and paramedic within earshot knew about the Henderson incident. Maria Henderson, 42 years old, mother of 3, who'd gone into cardiac arrest during what should have been a routine transport. Marcus had made a medication error, miscalculated a dosage under pressure. By the time they'd reached the hospital, it was too late to reverse the damage. "I'm sure," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the anger building in his chest. Jenny appeared beside him, her trauma kit ready. "We staying with the sedan?" Marcus looked at her, seeing something in her expression he hadn't expected. Not doubt, not fear, but determination. "Yeah, we're staying with her." The extraction took 18 minutes. 18 minutes of Marcus talking to the woman, whose name was Patricia Collins, keeping her conscious and focused, while firefighters worked to cut through twisted metal. 18 minutes of monitoring her vitals as her blood pressure dropped and her breathing became more labored. 18 minutes of second-guessing every decision while the woman's life hung by threads that were fraying with each passing moment. "Patricia, I need you to stay awake," Marcus said, his hand on her wrist, feeling the rapid, weak pulse that told him her body was shutting down. "Tell me about your kids. How many do you have?" "2," she whispered. "Emily's 16, Michael's 13. They're waiting for me to pick them up from school." "They're going to be okay," Marcus said, catching Jenny's eye. Her expression was grim as she monitored the portable cardiac monitor. They were losing her. Blood pressure 60/40 and dropping. Pulse 140 and climbing. Classic signs of hemorrhagic shock from internal bleeding. We're going to get you to the hospital, and you're going to see them again. But privately, Marcus was calculating odds that weren't in Patricia's favor, even if they got her extracted in the next 2 minutes, even if the helicopter was standing by. Even if everything went perfectly, she might not survive the flight. The kind of internal injuries that caused this rapid decline usually required immediate surgical intervention. And they were 20 minutes from the nearest trauma center. "Got her!" Chief Rodriguez called out as the last piece of the steering column was cut away. Marcus and Jenny moved in immediately, sliding a backboard behind Patricia and immobilizing her cervical spine. Her skin was pale and cool to the touch, her lips tinged blue, despite the oxygen mask. Classic signs of severe blood loss. As they loaded Patricia onto the ambulance stretcher, Marcus caught sight of the minivan extraction happening 30 yards away. Thompson and Chen had successfully removed the mother, who was conscious but disoriented. The children were out safely, with the facial laceration on the youngest girl requiring sutures, but nothing life-threatening. Everyone was going to survive that crash. But Patricia Collins was dying in front of him, and Marcus knew that if she didn't make it, every person on this scene would remember that he was the paramedic who'd been in charge when it happened. The paramedic who'd already proven he couldn't be trusted with critical decisions. The paramedic who should have stepped aside and let someone more reliable handle the case. Jenny climbed into the back of the ambulance with Patricia while Marcus took the driver's seat. As he started the engine, his radio crackled. "Helicopter transport is unavailable," dispatch announced. "Weather conditions deteriorating. All aircraft grounded. Transport by ground to Metro General." Marcus felt his heart sink. Metro General was 22 minutes away in good traffic. With Patricia's current condition, she had maybe 15 minutes before irreversible shock set in. They were going to lose her, and it was going to be his fault. Again. He hit the sirens and pulled away from the crash scene, his mind racing through options. There was Regional to have a trauma center. They medical. Only 14 minutes away, but they could stabilize her there and arrange transfer. But that would add time she didn't have. Metro General was the only hospital equipped to handle her injuries, but the distance might be too far. "How's she doing?" Marcus called back to Jenny as he navigated through traffic. "Not good," Jenny replied, her voice tight with concentration. "BP's down to 50/30. I'm pushing fluids, but she's not responding. We're losing her, Marcus." Marcus made a decision that went against every protocol he'd been taught. Instead of heading directly to Metro General, he turned toward Regional Medical. Jenny noticed immediately. "This isn't the way to Metro," she said. "Regional doesn't have trauma surgery." "I know," Marcus replied, "but they have Dr. Sarah Kim in their emergency department. She's ex-military, combat trained. If anyone can stabilize Patricia for transfer, it's her." "You're gambling with this woman's life," Jenny said. But there was no judgment in her voice, just recognition of the impossible choice Marcus was facing. "Yeah, I am. But if we go straight to Metro, she dies in this ambulance. At least this way she has a chance." The decision would either save Patricia Collins or destroy what was left of Marcus's career. There would be questions about why he diverted from standard protocol, questions about whether his judgment could be trusted, questions about whether the Henderson incident had been an isolated mistake or part of a pattern of poor decision-making under pressure. But as Marcus pushed the ambulance through traffic toward Regional Medical, he realized something fundamental had changed. For the first time since Henderson, he wasn't making decisions based on fear of failure. He was making them based on what his patient needed. And Patricia Collins needed a surgeon, even if it meant breaking rules to get her one. The radio crackled again. "Unit 47, what's your ETA to Metro General?" Marcus keyed the microphone. Unit 47 diverting to regional medical for emergency stabilization. Patient in severe hemorrhagic shock. Won't survive transport to Metro. There was a pause before dispatch responded. Unit 47, confirm you're diverting from designated trauma center without medical control authorization. Confirmed, Marcus replied. I'm taking responsibility for this decision. Jenny looked at him with something approaching respect. You know they're going to crucify you for this if it goes wrong. Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Then it better not go wrong. Regional Medical Center loomed ahead, its emergency department bustling with typical afternoon activity. Marcus pulled into the ambulance bay with Patricia's vitals deteriorating by the minute. Her systolic pressure had dropped to 40, barely enough to perfuse her vital organs. Jenny was manually ventilating her now, the oxygen mask no longer sufficient as Patricia slipped toward unconsciousness. Dr. Sarah Kim met them at the door, her surgical scrubs pristine, despite having just finished a complex procedure. She took one look at Patricia and immediately understood why Marcus had diverted. This woman needed surgical intervention within minutes, not the 20-minute transport to Metro General that would have killed her. What do we have? Kim asked, helping transfer Patricia to the emergency department gurney. Motor vehicle collision, chest trauma, probable internal bleeding, Marcus reported quickly. Vitals crashed during extraction. She's been hypotensive for the past 15 minutes, despite aggressive fluid resuscitation. Kim's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking pulse points and examining the subtle signs that indicated massive internal hemorrhage. Her military training showed in every movement, the same decisive confidence Marcus had seen in combat medics who'd learned to make life-saving decisions without hesitation. Get me a trauma panel, chest x-ray, and prep OR2, Kim called to her team. This woman has maybe 5 minutes before she arrests. As the emergency department erupted into controlled chaos around them, Marcus found himself standing beside the gurney, watching another physician take control of his patient. Part of him wanted to explain his decision to divert, to justify the choice that had probably ended his career. But Dr. Kim was already working with the focused intensity of someone who understood that explanations could wait until after they'd saved a life. Patricia's eyes fluttered open briefly as Kim inserted central venous access for rapid fluid replacement. The woman's lips moved silently, forming words she didn't have the strength to speak. Marcus leaned closer, catching fragments of what she was trying to say. Her children's names, Emily and Michael. The kids who would be waiting at school, wondering why their mother was late. She's trying to talk about her children, Marcus told Kim quietly. 2 kids, 16 and 13. They don't know about the accident yet. Kim nodded without looking up from her work. Then we make sure they don't have to plan a funeral. Her tone carried absolute conviction, the same certainty Marcus had heard in the voices of surgeons who refused to accept defeat, even when the odds were impossible. The chest x-ray confirmed what everyone suspected. Massive hemothorax with probable laceration to the spleen or liver. Patricia needed surgery immediately, but regional medical's operating rooms were equipped for emergency stabilization, not complex trauma surgery. The best Kim could do was control the bleeding temporarily and arrange helicopter transport to Metro General once Patricia was stable enough to survive the flight. But stabilizing her would require procedures that pushed the limits of emergency medicine. Kim would have to perform emergency surgery in the trauma bay, without the controlled environment of an operating room, without a full surgical team, with equipment that wasn't designed for the complex repair Patricia needed. It was exactly the kind of high-risk situation that could destroy a physician's career if something went wrong. Marcus watched Kim make the same impossible choice he'd made in the ambulance. Protocol said to stabilize with fluids and blood products, then transport immediately to a trauma center. But Patricia's condition was too unstable for transport, and following protocol would guarantee her death. Kim looked at Marcus, recognition passing between them. Two medical professionals who understood that sometimes saving lives required breaking rules. "I need someone with trauma experience to assist," Kim said quietly. "My usual surgical assistant is in OR1 with another case." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "You want me to assist in emergency surgery?" "I'm a paramedic, not a surgeon." "You're a paramedic who's seen more trauma than most residents," Kim replied. "I've read your record, Rivera. Before the Henderson incident, you had the highest success rate in the department for critical interventions. I need those hands steady and that experience focused." Jenny overheard the conversation and stepped closer. "Marcus, are you sure about this? If something goes wrong during surgery, they'll blame you for the diversion and the outcome." Marcus looked at Patricia, whose face was growing paler despite the blood transfusion Kim had started. He thought about Emily and Michael Collins, waiting at school for a mother who might never come home. He thought about Maria Henderson and the medication error that had haunted him for 6 months, and he realized that some risks were worth taking when lives hung in the balance. "I'll assist," Marcus said simply. Kim nodded and began scrubbing at the emergency department's surgical sink. As Marcus joined her, washing his hands with methodical precision, he felt the familiar weight of life and death responsibility settling on his shoulders. But this time, instead of fear, he felt something he hadn't experienced since before Henderson: purpose. The emergency surgery began at 3:47 in the afternoon. Kim worked with controlled urgency, making precise incisions while Marcus assisted with retraction and suction. Patricia's abdomen revealed the extent of her injuries. A lacerated spleen was bleeding freely into her peritoneal cavity, and there were multiple tears in her liver from the impact with the steering wheel. "This is worse than the imaging showed," Kim said, her voice steady despite the complexity of the repairs needed. "She's lost at least 3 units of blood internally. We need to get control of these bleeding sites before she arrests again." Marcus positioned retractors to give Kim optimal visualization while monitoring Patricia's vital signs on the bedside monitor. Her heart rate was climbing toward dangerous levels, but her blood pressure was finally starting to respond to the blood transfusion. The spleen was beyond repair. Kim made the difficult decision to remove it entirely, a procedure that would leave Patricia vulnerable to certain infections for the rest of her life, but would stop the catastrophic bleeding that was killing her. As she worked, Marcus found himself anticipating her needs, handing instruments before she asked, adjusting retraction as she moved to different areas of the surgical field. Despite 6 months of doubt and whispered conversations about his reliability, Marcus's hands were steady and his judgment sharp. The muscle memory of emergency medicine kicked in, overriding the psychological weight of the Henderson incident. He was exactly where he belonged, assisting in the kind of high-stakes procedure that separated competent paramedics from exceptional ones. 28 minutes after the first radio call, Patricia Collins was stable and breathing on her own. All 6 victims from Highway 45 survived that afternoon, including the children who went home to tell their friends about the paramedic who talked them through the scariest moment of their lives. Marcus Rivera proved that redemption isn't about erasing past mistakes, but about having the courage to trust your training when lives depend on it. Sometimes the paramedic nobody trusts turns out to be exactly the one everyone needs.